Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, where myself, Dr. Dave Peltz, and our co-host, Dr. Joe Hamlett, share our experiences and insight to help save the world. Supposedly. Yeah, we'd like to think that, but realistically, it's probably not going to happen. So today's topic is going to be it's never too late. So
Okay.
our usual means of bantering is one of us introduces the topic and then casually tosses the topic like a hot potato to the other person, and hopefully we get something great out of this. So, Dr. Joe, how are you doing today?
I am doing absolutely fabulous. Great.
Yeah, that was a slightly overly energetic intro, but as we normally do, again, the topic is never too late. What when we talk about the phrase "never too late," what comes to mind for you, Dr. Joe?
Well, most of us, when we think about time, like never too late, we often associate that with age. And so when I think about never too late, I think of all those things that you might have put off to the side that you thought it was too late to try and, do or accomplish. That's what we're here to talk about, that it's never too late to pick up an old passion or to start something totally new.
Mhm.
And I've used my example many times, but I'll just use my example when I went back to school. I was 40 years old, and at that time,
How's that
I
possible? Because you're only like 30 right now.
exactly right. The time just doesn't add up, the years. But yeah, 40 years old, and like many of us, to be honest, it had been 23 years since I graduated from high school. So for me to even consider school was already mentally challenging for me, just to even think to get back into that mode of going back to school.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I did that, and it was great that I took that leap, jumped in, and said, "Hey, I've got to get this accomplished." Because what's funny is my very first class, that I was had a classmate. She was actually 76 years old,
Mm.
right?
Right.
76 years old, working on her undergraduate degree, her bachelor's degree, and we all were really, shocked, and it actually put us at ease to think that, I thought I was 40 years old was too old, but here's a lady that was 76 years old just now, resuming her college
Mhm.
degree. So that helped me tremendously. She may not have known that, but it did. Just again to put me in the mindset that what am I concerned with? Why am I so concerned with age and things like that when she's 30 years my senior, almost 40 years my senior,
Mhm.
and she's still attempting to accomplish this. So when we think of, again, we associate time with age. Even today, me and Dave are sitting here in front of you in our 50s, mid to upper 50s, and we're podcast hosts. And then age may not be associated with a podcast, but just even to think that we started this much later in our lives. So
Mhm.
it's just another testament that age doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It is never too late. If we started this at the age of 75, it still wouldn't be too late. It's
Right.
just that, we often get hung up on, well, I'm too old to do this. Now, granted, I will admit, so I played basketball. I love basketball, my favorite sport. So I played it into my 50s. And, until my bones and everything else started to tell me, hey, it's too late. So, yeah, I can't say to myself, hey, I'm ready to start a professional basketball career in my upper 50s. That's not logical or doesn't make sense. But there are still other things that I could do associated with basketball. I
Mhm.
could attempt to be a coach. I could even, if I went down the route of becoming a high school
Or you could
teacher,
join a senior league.
or even play in a senior league or coach a senior
Yeah.
league. I don't necessarily have to play, but I could offer my assistance and my expertise,
Mhm.
similar to what we're doing here today.
Right.
But I could do that and still be part of my dream or the thing that I love. So it's just how you look at it. You may not be able to score the win and layup or dunk the ball anymore, but you still could be contributing in some kind of way. So if you
Sure.
think of it in terms of, may not being able to do the exact thing that you wanted to do, but you can still figure out a way to still incorporate that in your life some type of way. So me and Dave are here just to kind of briefly talk about the idea that it is never too late, that you can pick up something brand new, even with your job. You may have been doing something 20 plus years, 30 years even, and decide, you know what, I've enjoyed this, but I want to try something different. It's not too late.
Mhm.
We're always, again, we've talked about this many times. If you have that mindset of continuing to learn, continuing to grow and develop, then it's no different than a kid trying a sport and not liking it, saying, "Hey, I want to try something different,"
Mhm.
and finding out that they like that other thing better. So it's no different than that. That we still have the ability to make a choice and to try something new. So if we keep that in mind, and we've said this before too, opening your mind to the possibilities,
Mhm.
that's huge. If you limit yourself, again, if you think based on age and time, then yeah, you're not going to try it. You're not going to be successful because you're already going into it with a preconceived idea that you can achieve it. So if you keep your mind open to the possibilities, then the sky's the limit, right?
Joe, you said some great things. And for our viewers and listeners, uh, to kind of go back in time a little bit, Joe and I, our backgrounds are uncannily very similar. It's really weird when, especially when Joe and I met, when we started sharing our experiences, we kind of looked at each other like, are you pulling my leg? Because it's that uncanny. And when you mentioned the older student, it's funny because when I was in my undergraduate program, there was a lady who was, I think she was like 68 or
Okay.
72, not quite as old as your elderly student,
Right.
but definitely not the norm in
Right.
any of the classes that I'd taken up into that point, let alone listening to my peers. And she was kind of a unicorn. And she said that she wasn't going to school because she wanted to. She wasn't going to school because she needed to. She's going to school to show her granddaughter how important college was because her
Oh wow.
granddaughter was not confident or not in the mindset that they needed to go to college
Okay.
or do much of anything. So she was doing it to prove to her granddaughter that if she can do it, that her granddaughter needs to do it. So again, another one of those uncanny experiences that's very
Right.
similar, um, that we have in our pocket. And um, we're talking about it's never too late to change, careers or ideas or try things. And then I'll throw in my little 2 cents or 45 minutes. It's not 45 minutes, folks. It
I hope
feels like
not.
it sometimes.
You might be here by yourself.
Yeah. Also not uncommon to be talking to myself. So, but some folks, they think, oh, it's too late. It's not too late because, um, as Joe mentioned, we both started school late. I was around 30 when I started school. And, look at us now. Joe and I are both doctors. So, it can be done. It is not too late. You can try new things to Joe's point. Some people have put off things on their bucket list, if you will, only to find out that and think, wow, I should have done that sooner because I really enjoyed that. So, part of the things that we're trying to share with you is if there's something that you want to try it. It's okay to do that. And if you like it, great. And if not, then at least it's not that you failed. You don't fail. You only fail if you don't try something because
Right.
you don't know. And if you don't like it, then you're no worse off than you were than when you didn't try it. You just know for sure now. And if you do like it, hey, you might get something great out of it. It might be a new hobby, it might be a new career, it might be just time with friends or family or colleagues or coworkers, or to Joe's point earlier, maybe there's something else you want to try in your career. You've been doing something for a while, and now you might be like, hey, I want to try something new. I've been doing this for so long, or maybe just a short period of time. I want to try something different. And when we look at things from a professional development perspective, there's kind of two general theories that are out there. One is called broad and shallow, which is like your generalist, or broad and with some degree of depth so that you have some expertise. Or there's the narrow and deep, which is kind of what some people consider your expert in a narrow field. So some person, a person might be really good at accounting and finance for material estimating, let's say, or be the best salesperson for automobiles or something like that. But after a while, they might change their mind or think, hey, maybe I want to try something new. Maybe I want to go into training, or maybe I want to go into engineering or the medical industry. And I've met people that have completely changed career trajectories. I mean, you'd think, how does that relate? And the answer simply is they don't relate. If you're an engineer and then you decide to become a registered nurse, they don't relate. They're completely different aspects of learning. But some people do it because that's where they found their enjoyment. They enjoyed one thing for a while, and now they decided to do something different. Same with people who retire. Many retirees are going back into the workplace, and usually it's not into the same field that they were in before, because they've been there and done that. They're doing something new, a new challenge, something to invigorate them. And it does not have to do with age. You can change your mind as often and as early as you want. You have to understand the positive and negative consequences. If you're going to job hop every month or every 2 weeks, there might be something on your resume that would raise some questions. But here again, it just depends. It depends on the economy, depends on where you're at, your living circumstances, so many different aspects. So when Joe and I decided to bring up the topic of it's never too late, it is hugely broad, and that is intentional, because we want you to think about these things. We want you to think about this topic and think of all the possibilities. And then when you think about all those possibilities, pause for a moment and think about the things that you haven't thought about. Think outside that proverbial box and open your mind. Joe and I have talked to many people over our careers where they've said, yes, I've thought about everything. There's nothing else I want to do, because I've already done everything in X industry. And it's like, okay, but have you thought about these other industries that you could do the same or something similar in, or maybe just go into a different industry and think about things? And you'd be surprised how many times people pause and scratch their heads and say, I've never really thought about changing industries, because we get into almost an autopilot mode with our blinders on, and we're thinking this is the only thing and the only place we can operate, and that's not true. So it's back into transferable skills, another one of our favorite topics.
Yeah.
You can take your transferable skills and take them to any industry or create your own industry. So, when Joe and I talk about it's never too late, it is literally never too late to do anything.
Yep.
Personally, professionally, academically, trades wise, corporation wise, industry wise. The world is your world has infinite possibilities. It's just where do you decide, what straw do you decide to pick out of the pile this time, and look at it and decide whether you're going to run with it or not. Now, we're not advocating running with sharp objects. That's not where we're going here. But think about all the possibilities that are out there, and then after you're done, think about all the possibilities outside of those possibilities to really cover all your bases.
Dave,
like say something.
No, it's just, that's huge what you just said. Think about the possibilities, and then think outside of that, and even more possibilities. And I said it before, the sky is literally the limit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. If you could think it, you could probably do it. If you considered it, you could probably do it. It's just that mindset of, okay, I'm going to try it. And like Dave said earlier, you don't fail unless you don't try it. Yeah. So, even if you, to his point though, he said, if you try something every 2 weeks or a month, like job hopping, that could raise some red flags. But if you really give it a considerable amount of time and effort, and really do something, it probably will take longer than 2 weeks or a month to realize that that's not the thing for you. But to really, contribute and really be all in with whatever that new thing is. And if you decide or figure out, no, you don't like it, some people may only take 2 weeks. It may only take a month to figure that out. But like Dave said, there are consequences. If you say, hey, I've been doing this job for 10 years and I'm ready to do something different. And then the next year, 18 months, you end up with 30 different things, depending on where you want to go. Again, if you want to stay in some type of corporate structure, that may raise red flags to recruiters that, you're applying for positions. But if you just kind of decided, hey, I'm going to do my thing until something finally sticks, that's fine too. It's just, again, depending on where you are in your career, where you think you might be headed, some consideration might need to be had on it. Yeah, we love for people to, try things and to experience things so that they can. Dave said it earlier. Maybe it's on your bucket list. Check those things off. That's great, but at the same time, I'll also have to be thinking, logically too. That I can't, like I said, just show up and do all these different things and then expect to go back and say, okay, I did all my stuff. Now I want to jump back in. So it just, again, we don't disagree or say that that's not the right thing to do. It's just that, some consideration needs to be had before you just go down this path of I'm going to try everything I ever wanted to do. Just, again, at the end of it, or if you're done, it other people may not view it the same way as you. It may be you gaining all these great experiences, and Dave said it again before, that transferable skills, everything that you've learned in that journey that you've taken may be applicable to a lot of different things. But more than likely, the person on the other side of that, like I said, if you're applying for a new job, they may have questions about all the different things you've done. And again, they may be beneficial to that organization, but sometimes they wouldn't see it that way.
Yeah.
So,
And Joe, I like how you mentioned that the sky's the limit, and a lot of people, or some people can think that way, that the sky is the limit, and it truly is. And again, our topics just keep popping up in our conversation: perspective. And if it's kind of challenging to envision the sky being the limit, maybe consider this. I've heard, nothing is impossible, and that does have kind of a negative connotation. I prefer to think of things as everything is possible, because it provides a positive connotation. When you think about everything as possible, it changes your mindset a little bit. And to give you an example, or to provide an example, in the mid part of last century, there was the space race to get to the moon. Oh, that's impossible. It can't be done.
right.
And yet there was a handful of people that said, no, everything is possible. It is possible. And what happened? It's been done. We put people into space, we put people on the moon, collectively, the collective we, and we've done things that society never thought was possible, because everything is possible. You just got to figure it out. We're not saying it's going to happen overnight. We're not saying you're going to be an instant expert at it, but everything is possible. So if there's something that you want to do, or something that you want to try or are curious about, explore it. See if it's something that interests you, because you don't know until you try these things.
Right.
For a long time, I thought, oh, I want to play guitar, I want to, join a rock band, because I was like 16, and that's what 16-year-olds think. I want to play music, and it's like, and I got the guitar, and I learned to play basic pieces of it, and I lost interest. It was just, I tried it. I love music, but it's just not something I want to pursue. There are other things that I enjoy much more. It's not that I don't enjoy it. There's other things I enjoy more. So when we think about hobbies and, critical self-reflection and the possibilities and perspective and transferable skills, these things go a long way when you put them together. Again, Joe and I talk about these individual topics, but they're interwoven with all these other elements, because there is a degree of complexity to where you cannot look at something in an isolated environment without considering the other aspects that integrate into it, those things inherently. So I'm going to pause there for a moment.
No, you're right. And Dave said it, we typically will bring up all these different things because they are closely related. You typically can't do one thing without the other. Like he said, he mentioned it earlier, which we typically mention every time, is that self-reflection piece. It is that constant evaluation of who you are, where you want to go. I mean, if you think in those terms, it helps you to remain open to the possibilities and remain open to the unknown, and testing yourself, challenging, pushing yourself beyond what what's right in front of you. And you mentioned, being able to go to the moon or go to the stars and those types of things. It had to take people that thought outside of that box that's in front of them, the things that they know are true. They had to have some idea that the sky's the limit or other things are possible, like you said earlier. And I think if we use that approach, we will remain open to, seeing things differently. We'll see them as not just what's right in front of us, the black and white, but we'll see some of those gray areas, and they'll start to form in front of us, and think beyond what's directly in front of us. And that's when I talk to people, that's what I try and help them see, those things they can't see right in front of them, those
Right.
things that don't exist yet, those
And
things
that's a
that they
great point, Joe, because wow, that is so powerful, especially in this conversation, because many times we as people get so wrapped up in our daily lives and our patterns of behavior that we forget, and we're just on autopilot, and we just
right,
need to
right,
and recenter ourselves and think about almost going back in our mindset to when we were children, where
yep,
everything was possible. I mean, you
yep,
look at small children, everything in the world is new to them, and therefore everything is possible.
right,
But as we
yep.
grow older, we become jaded a little bit because of our experiences and our inherent biases, and it
Well, and
becomes, it is what it is.
and those influences in our lives,
Yeah, and those influences in our
those
lives,
people telling us, "Hey, you can't do
you
that.
can't.
You
Yeah.
can't do this," and as a young child, you're wide open to the possibilities. But as you grow, as you said, to young adulthood, adults, that starts to close.
Yeah,
That
it narrows
those
your
opportunities start
views.
to close, or your views of those opportunities start to close, just because
Mm-hmm.
you, like you said, the experiences, the influences, the things that you experience yourself lead you to those,
Mm-hmm.
that opinion or that idea that I can achieve those things,
Mm-hmm.
or those things are non-existent to me anymore.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
what
yeah,
we
if we could,
need to do is just pause and open those doors back up,
right back,
because
exactly.
they've either closed because of the way the wind is blowing, or because people have closed them on us, or maybe we've closed some
Right.
of those
Yep.
doors ourselves,
Yep.
which has created even more limitations. When we talk about synergy, one plus one doesn't equal two, it's greater than the sum of its parts. The same can be said about, limiting ourselves. We can limit
Right.
ourselves in one way, but if we limit ourselves too much, the limitations tend to amplify themselves. So, when Joe and I talk about pausing and reflecting, part of that is recentering yourself and opening those doors that have been closed to re-examine the possibilities that truly do exist, instead of buying into, and Joe and I are guilty of this, just like everyone is, that we buy into the limitations, and there are no limitations.
Right.
Everything is possible. It's just how open you are and how willing you are to explore them.
And the limitations, typically the limitations are what we place on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes it is outside influence, but for the most part, it's the limitations we place on ourselves that
Mm-hmm.
are most critical. I think back, you mentioned as a kid, like you said, you were starry eyed, had all these dreams of what you're going to be and what you were going to accomplish. And I've told people this over the last 10, 15, probably 20 years now, that the one thing for me, like I said, I'm in my upper 50s now. The thing that's most exciting to me is the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I still think in terms of a kid, and the world is still wide open for me. And that's why I say, me and Dave with this podcast, and just thinking beyond this podcast, what's next?
Yeah.
What are we going to end up doing this next year,
Mm-hmm.
or years beyond that? That's the way I view things now. So I really do. And I've jokingly said this to people over the years too. I still don't know what I want to do when I
Yeah,
grow up,
absolutely.
because I
Because
am
we are
open to the
open to the
possibility.
possibilities.
Absolutely. That,
And we're already finishing each other's sentence. glasses.
See, stop doing that. But that's the point that
Yeah.
again, we both have that mindset of, like you said, we do struggle some days on like, things are not happening the way we want, but then we
Sure.
sit down and reflect and think, and again, we think about where we came from and where we are today, and then the
Mhm.
possibilities of where we can go for tomorrow. And that's what excites us again. That's what gets us flowing again and thinking and having fun on this podcast, is because that's it. We are open to the possibilities, between me and him, during the week. We meet so many different people and excited about where that relationship can go or what we can accomplish together. That's our excitement, is what's next, and so that is what keeps us going, what gets us, through those days when we think, oh man, this is not working the way we thought it would, but the
Mhm.
excitement comes back when we think, okay, look at where we were, look at where we are today, and think about where we can go tomorrow. That's what excites us.
Yeah, and I'm going to share one more anecdote, and then I'll toss over to you for your final thoughts. So we talk about um, it's never too late. Joe and I mentioned we started school later in life, and when I graduated my bachelor's degree, I was approaching my mid 30s, and there's a perspective out there that our learning years are you know infant, adolescent, teenage years type thing, maybe early 20s. So and then we continue to learn as we grow older, but not at the same pace or the same ability or level. And that can be argued easily because, and I'll use myself as an example. I was terrified of math, like many students are, it's just, I don't know why we're afraid of math. It is what it is. It's just another aspect of learning and perspective. But I was so afraid of math that I left it to my last two classes in college. And then I was still so afraid of it that I didn't even take those classes initially. I got the college textbook, I studied it cover to cover, and I tried to test out. I didn't pass testing out of it, but what I did do is I had just taught myself college math.
Right, right,
So sometimes we're so afraid of things. And if we take that moment as a learning moment to say, hey, I'm going to get through this one way or another, you will get there. It's perseverance and attitude. So when we say it's not
right.
too late, it's literally it's not too late because Joe and I didn't get our doctorate degrees when we were 18 years old, contrary to popular belief. You know, we got them much later in our lives. So like 2 weeks ago. No, just kidding. We've had them for a while, at least 6 months. So um, yeah, it's never too late. It's never too late to learn. It's never too late to do. There might be some challenges or limitations to the way we approach things or to the extent to which we can do things, but it is never too late. So, Joe, what are your final thoughts on
So
never
Dave,
too
I'll
late?
just throw a quick, like an adult, just like you
Yeah.
did, but very similar. Like you said, we're very similar in things that have happened to us. So my, nemesis course or class that I waited till the end was speech.
Hmm.
And I mentioned this before that
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I failed speech in high school, so I had to take it a second time, and then I still almost didn't pass. But speech for me was that course that I
Mm-hmm.
hated, and then like I say, I tried to clep out of my
Mm-hmm.
speech class several times, and they put you in a room, you're supposed to give this speech, and each time my speech was good, but it wasn't directed toward the type of speech they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I didn't pass my speech course, or the CLEP test, I still came out strong as, okay, you could do a speech, but it just wasn't the right content,
Mm-hmm.
or appropriate content. So I learned that. So at the end, so to finish out my undergraduate degree, that was one of the last classes I took. It
Wow.
was a speech class, so kind of very similar to you. But
Yeah, that's
but
crazy.
but now I'm in front. We're on a podcast. I've done training. I've done teaching. I've done facilitating. So it's never too late.
Never too late.
Again, I graduated my doctorate at almost 50 years old.
Mm.
So, and then I didn't mention this, but during our graduation ceremony, it was announced during our ceremony that there was a 76-year-old graduate. He had just finished his doctorate degree with
Wow,
us.
that's so
So I
cool.
started my education journey, my late education journey, with a 76-year-old woman, with her undergrad, and then I finished it out with a 76-year-old gentleman, Kind of to your point, he had a military career that he retired from. Then he went into teaching for 10 or so years, maybe 20, and then he ended up earning his doctorate degree. So again, if you think about never too late, he was an example of that, being able to accomplish two careers and then still go back to school and earn his
That
doctorate
is so
degree.
powerful, Joe. I'm glad you shared
Absolutely.
that story because that is perhaps one of the most appropriate examples I've ever heard about never too
Absolutely.
late. Two
Yep.
careers and then a doctorate.
Yep.
That is just
Absolutely.
phenomenal.
Yeah. And so again, for me to think that, being age 50, still going through careers and things that I had accomplished something great, which I did, but then to hear his story was like, oh my goodness, that again, I could still reach for the stars is
Yeah.
again, that excitement that he brought when he explained to us that, his journey, and we were like, oh my goodness. So
Mhm.
to today's point, yeah, we all of us have made huge strides and accomplishments that we should be proud of. But then we listen to a story like that, and it's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
it is possible. We can go beyond and further.
Mhm.
So that's what I'll end with. Just we are capable of great things, and we said this before. In most cases, the limitations are limitations we placed on ourselves, that we can overcome those things, and just doing that critical self-reflection and really taking a look at where you are, where you came from first, where you are today, and then where you'd like to be, because the sky is the limit as long as you keep your mind open to the possibilities. So I'll
Joe,
end there.
I'm not even going to attempt to say something to top that because I can't. That was such a powerful statement and anecdote. So, with that, I'd like to have we'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for tuning in to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, the plethora of episodes, because we've been dropping these things weekly for over a year now, coming a year and a half.
Yep.
So, there's plenty of opportunity to listen to us. If you like it, if you enjoyed it or got some value out of it, or know someone who could get something out of it, please share, get it out there. Get these things out there, to because that's really what we're here to do, is help other people, provide guidance, insight, and sometimes a little comedic relief. So with that, as we always say when we close out, keep on being your not so ordinary you.